Hey guys, I'm Jason Kreidman with Dad University. Just a couple of hours ago, I had quite a treat. I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Jane Nelsen, founder of Positive Discipline. And what happened was, I'll link this video here. I created a video on positive discipline. I talked about some of the benefits, how wonderful, and some of the history. And Dr. Jane saw that video. And so it turns out we're actually located in the same city. So I invited her to come on in, and this is a result of that interview. I hope you enjoy it. I certainly did. Jane is a pioneer in parenting education, and it was quite a treat to be able to do this. So I hope you enjoy it. Check it out. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We coincidentally live somewhat close to each other. And I wanted to first talk a little bit about your history. I want to get into some of the positive discipline and the value that we can get from that. But how did you get started in all of this? Maybe take me back even growing up and sort of that history.
Well, I'm just going to start with how positive discipline came to be.
Okay.
Because I'm the mother of 7 children.
Oh.
And I have what I call my before, during, and after. And so I have 2 that were already raised by the time I had 5 children when I decided that I just needed help. Okay. Because I did not know how to be a good parent. That was my dream. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to be a good mother. But at the time, all I knew was the 2 models of being too strict or too permissive.
And was this like about in the 1970s or sort of, because I know you kind of started all this in the early 80s.
This was in the 1970s.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And, I would be punitive and would tell I just didn't like myself. Yeah. Punitive, not just strict.
Yeah. But that was the norm at the time?
Yes.
Was it?
Yeah. Punishment, timeouts,
discipline,
grounding,
as they would call it. Yeah.
I didn't hit my kids, but I didn't do that kind of punishment. But it was all punishment, rewards for good behavior, all that external stuff. And then because I didn't enjoy that, I would go to being too permissive.
Okay.
And then I didn't enjoy my kids because they became spoiled.
Did you learn, where did you learn your initial parenting? Were you modeling it after your own parents?
Oh, no. I guess I was. Yes, that's what they would do. The punishment and the rewards, yes.
I mean, so you weren't studying parenting at that time.
No.
You just were a parent and were kind of, hey, I'll get the information from either, my own experience, your own experience as a child and what your parents did. So you weren't a seeker. You weren't like reading books about things or studying it or taking classes or anything like that. It was just, I'm a parent.
Right. Yeah. Like they say, it doesn't come with an instruction manual for parenting or for relationships, marriage. But because of that struggle, I was motivated to start studying. So I decided to take a class in child development.
Okay.
And I was just so lucky that the class I took, they said, we're not going to teach you a bunch of theories. We're just going to teach you one theory and how to apply it in real practical ways that help children learn self-discipline and responsibility, cooperation.
Sounds great. Yeah.
And it's based on the work of Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikurs. Yeah. Okay. And if I just was to say, the value foundation is that Adler really believed in treating everyone with dignity and respect, including children.
Yep.
And I believed in encouragement. Did not believe in punishment. Just really believed in understanding children and the beliefs behind their behavior, and that their behavior is usually based on a mistaken idea of how to find belonging and significance.
Sure.
Because that's the primary goal of everyone. And so we can talk more about that, but it's like, I do have to say that I was what I call an obnoxious learner. Mine was, yes, but, and what if, and if you don't punish, does that mean they're going to get away with everything? And
So it was a very foreign idea for you? I mean, you came into this obviously as a disciplinarian. That's what, and were you married at the time?
Yes.
And so was your husband a disciplinarian as well?
Yeah, that's all we knew.
Yeah.
That's all we knew.
And how old were your kids at that time?
Well, at the time, when I took this class, it's been a long time.
They were very young, or were
they were? I had children who were 7, 5, and 3. Those were the ones
Okay.
that were during.
Okay.
And in fact,
So you were in the thick of it. I mean, that is the
Yes,
thick of it, of,
yes.
chaos.
The 2 that were already right, and then the 2 that came after I learned that it actually even came after I had written the book.
Okay.
No, oh gosh, it has been a long time.
No, that's okay. So you were taking, you decided, you obviously, because of your own kind of struggles and not feeling obviously like you kind of had control of what was going on. I mean, you looked at your situation and said, okay, this isn't probably working optimally.
Right.
I'm obviously not doing something right. Maybe I could learn these skills.
Right.
It's going to be easier for me. It's going to be a little bit easier for my children. And so you started taking classes. And so then what happened from there? You took some classes, you continued your education. How did you jump from there to eventually writing a book?
Well, the thing is that as I did keep practicing, even in spite of my objections or my concerns, I found out it did work. And if it didn't, if I did something that didn't work, and then I would go back and I'd learn why. Maybe I had been, because we believe in being kind and firm.
Right.
That combination. And I might have been firm without being kind first.
And
so
the
anyway,
permissive is too kind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So as I just kept learning, I just got more and more excited. And I'm sure you know that when you find something that works, you want to share it with others. Mm-hmm. So I just started sharing with my friends, because this is one of the things that Dreikers is the one, Rudolf Dreikers took over after Adler died, of this philosophy. And he just says, go teach others. The best way to learn is just go teach. And so I started teaching parenting classes and started.
So you had interaction with him?
No.
Okay. So no, it was just his teachings. And so your professor or teacher at the time kind of encouraged you as well?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
No, I just learned and then on by it. But because I was so interested, I kept wanting to learn more. And so then that's why I kept going to school. And then I was always looking for classes that taught more about Adlerian. And I got my doctorate in doing, that comes later. But I will just tell you right now, I eventually became a school counselor.
Okay.
And I was in a school district where they had federal funds for a project, and we called it Project Accept, which was Adlerian counseling concepts for encouraging parents and teachers.
And did you create that?
I didn't create it, but I got to be the director of it.
Okay. So you saw the word Adlerian, and you knew immediately that you wanted to be part of that.
Well, I was a counselor at this school district where they, in the psychology department, they were using Adlerian principles. So they wrote a grant. I applied to be the director. Cool. And I had 6 paraprofessionals who worked with the parents, and I worked with the teachers. And so we had funding, and we had an evaluator we had a control school and 2 experimental schools.
Gotcha.
And we were able to really do this. We had a professional evaluator who the results were, let me just interject that I thought, well, we've got this professional evaluator. I might as well go get a doctorate because somebody else will do the hard part.
Gotcha.
And to me, that was what
you
was
just
the
kept
hard part.
going. I mean, it was really the education, like you said, when you find something that you're that passionate about is one thing. It then works.
Right.
You're able to implement it into your own life.
Right.
You see that it's working with your own kids. You're having a better relationship with them. Well, that's very cool. Then you got federal money to then kind of pursue the creation of this curriculum. I mean, that's kind of what it was.
Well, yes, and then because we were so successful statistically, we got funding for dissemination.
Okay.
So there was 3 more. We've proven statistically that this works. So then we had funding for 3 more years to disseminate it throughout the state of California for anybody who wanted to adopt the program. And then it was out of all the success stories that the book came.
Gotcha.
Because there were so many parents who were using it, and teachers who were saying, I've been teaching for 25 years and kids are so different, I want to get out of teaching. But then after they would learn positive discipline in their classroom, they say, I can enjoy teaching again.
Right.
And so many parents who just said, this changed my life.
Yeah.
And so it was a combination of a lot of their stories and breaking it down into tools so that they really understand, okay, if not punishment, then what?
And so the book, you decided to do the book. Was that more so like like you said, okay, I can give it to this teacher or I can give it to this parent and do that? Or did you have a different vision that you were going to become much more popular than,
I had no idea.
So that wasn't the goal or anything. It was
absolutely not. In fact, I wish I should have brought a copy of the first printing that I self-published. And it was, but the point is that we had developed this workshop and we had a book, and the book that I was using went out of print. And so in 2 months, I just sat down and wrote this book because people really want something more to take home with them. And so I had, after the funding ran out, those 3 years, the district said you can still keep doing it as long as you generate enough money coming into the district to pay for it.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I did need the book because it was a class that was getting quite popular, implementing in schools throughout California.
So then you had the book, and you said it was originally you self-published it. So you're printing it yourself or doing whatever and then selling it. So how did it evolve into, I guess, a wider audience? Obviously the schools started adapting, which has now been a huge thing for you as the schools. And I've known, my own schools with my kids that they're teaching it. They're having, the teachers have gone through those classes. How did it go? How did the book then, expand from there? Was it just word of mouth kind of thing?
Well, first of all, it was because, in the self-publishing business, which I didn't know what I was doing. And I went to a local printer and it cost a fortune to just have 2,000 copies printed, $8,000.
Right.
You're
hoping these sell. Yeah, you're hoping these sell.
Thinking, okay, I know that I have people signed up for 500 people for workshops. I'm going to be sitting on 1,500 in the rest of my life in my garage. But somebody at the last minute said, put an order blank in the back of the book. Now, this was before the internet. Mm-hmm. And so I put an order blank.
That's how my mother sold a lot of her books.
Right, yes. Those were the days. Yep. And what's so interesting is that within a year or two, I can't remember for sure now which, they were gone. So then I read a book on self-publishing and learned how to do it with the short run printers and was able to get 5,000 copies for 3,000. Anyway.
So you were a hustler. I mean, you were sort of putting all those pieces together. I mean, and you were doing it yourself.
Yeah.
You didn't have anybody else helping you.
No. Well, and then I did. I hired some people. I also became a therapist, and I had a counseling office, and we had a big room where we did book sales. Just
became a therapist in addition to getting your PhD and understanding. So did you have time for anything? Did you get the chance to relax?
Let me tell you, I had a very supportive husband. And actually, when I had that opportunity to go get the doctorate, because the University of San Francisco just started a new program, and he's an engineer of the state of California, and he was thinking of going back and getting his master's degree at the time this opportunity came up, and he said, "You like going to school. I don't like going to school." He said, "You've been the primary caretaker. I'll do that," even though he was working full time. But he says, "I'm willing to take on that role while you're doing this." He was just very supportive. In fact, since we're going down this path, when I was pregnant with our first child, and we were living in Sacramento, where were we living? In Ventura, California. And I was going to the University of Northridge, which was 50 miles away. And my baby was due in the middle of the semester, and he would drive me to school.
That is supportive.
And then after the baby was born, he would drive me so I could nurse during breaks and nurse on the way and back. So yes, very, very supportive.
Well, that's quite an undertaking for yourself too. I mean, to think about it at that time, like, you know what, maybe I can wait a little bit instead of, no, I got to do this now.
It was just because he was so supportive that I could do it now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so the books were selling in California, even though they were really funny looking. And then I got a designer finally. I made so many mistakes, and then I would learn what to do. So I got a professional designer. But the interesting thing is that I decided, okay, these are selling pretty good. I think I had sold 80,000 as a self-published, and I thought, I think I'll see if I can get a major publisher. But I went to get a agent, and I said, well, I'd like a pretty good advance. You won't be able to get that because you're a first-time author. I said, okay, I'll just keep doing it myself. Then, fortunately, Valentine called me directly and offered me more than what I had asked for. And I didn't have to pay the agent.
Yeah.
And so that was just really lucky that somebody who liked it said to send it to Valentine, somebody who knows it. And then all of the other books, Prima was a new publisher who was locally, and he was a dad who had just had a child and found some of the other self-published books and wanted to. So anyway.
There wasn't a lot of parenting. I mean, there was kind of a handful of parenting books at that time, though. There wasn't a lot.
Right. PET, Parent Effectiveness Training, and then Cantor's, I can't remember what, when I was on the Oprah show, and Cantor had written Assertive Discipline, which was very, authoritarian.
Yeah.
Authoritarian. Punishment, put kids' names on the board, marbles in the jar. And so...
How did that go over?
Oh, it was a very, very popular
because
program.
of the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's interesting. The reason I decided to call the book Positive Discipline is because most people think discipline means punishment.
Right.
And that's not the true meaning. It
Right.
comes from disciplining a pupil, a teacher. And so sometimes people would come because they thought, I'm going to learn how to do punishment in a positive way. And then when they come in and say, no punishment. What? No punishment.
There's definitely that connection of the word discipline, not connecting it to teaching and learning, and instead punishment. There's no question that's how I think most people think of it.
Exactly. But fortunately, all the research and the brain research has proven that punishment is not effective long term. And it was just really fortunate that I had already written this book and it already had some popularity among people who practically said, yes, it does work.
Right.
But then to have the brain research. Now, I taught child development at a community college for several years, and I knew that there was a lot of research before it became popular that punishment did not work, but it was buried in academic journals. Mm-hmm. And so now there are more and more books that are really saying, no, punishment is not effective, and we've got the research and the to back it
it's
up.
one of the bigger topics that I get comments on is when I do anything related to not providing physical punishment, not providing timeouts and all these things. That's where I probably get some of the most comments, and adversary where, I grew up that way and I'm fine. I said, no, it's probably the 10,000 hours and the love and the communication that your parents gave you.
Yeah. You turned out fine in spite of the punishment,
right.
Not because of it. That's true, because there was also that the love. But I just love it when people say, I was punished and I turned out fine. And I say, okay, but here's my question. Do you enjoy punishing your children?
Right.
And they say, no. If they said yes, I would say you did not turn out fine.
Right.
But
they couldn't win either way.
Right. But since you don't enjoy it, wouldn't you like to find something else that you could enjoy that would give you the same results that you're hoping to get through punishment?
Yeah, and one of the things you said, which rings, is for the long term, because I think people look so short term where they feel like, whatever punishment they are giving, it might fix that specific situation by stopping it. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about teaching the child long term, right from wrong, having a well-rounded person, obviously that's where the research has said, no, that's not going to work.
And it goes a little bit deeper than, let me just explain that. When I said belonging and significance, belonging is the love. Mm-hmm. Significance, it comes from feeling responsible and capable. And so when you use punishment, children might learn to be responsible and do the right thing, but they don't have that feeling of, I'm okay, I'm good enough. There's always that lack of self-esteem. Mm-hmm. I'm okay only if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Right. The conditional.
Yeah. On the other hand, the kids who get lots of love, but not the firmness, they think, okay, I'm loved, but I'm not very capable, and I don't. Love means other people should take care of me.
Right.
Other people should treat me special.
Right.
And so this is the thing. It's like, and especially the people who were capable, and they do so many things to hide the hidden inadequacies, feelings of inadequacy. I'm never quite good enough. What are people going to think? I've got to prove myself. So there's always that nagging sense. And so really a more balanced person has the belonging and the significance.
That makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
And, there's books that like, oh gosh, what was her name that wrote the book on grit? That you still want kids, and grit to me is the significance.
Yep.
Where they really
resiliency
are resilient, and all of that. They have more of that kind of creativity when they have that balance of kind and
and it's funny that parents, and some parents who do punishment and that, think that they're building it by giving the punishment. They think that they're building the resiliency and the grit and the toughness, if you will, the mental
exactly,
and that's not the case.
But they don't have that feeling, that sense of security, of self-worth. The other thing, I forgot what I was going to say.
No, that's okay. The one thing I wanted to touch on too is, you've now seen, and starting in the 80s, obviously, there's been some time now. And, as I deal with men primarily, one of the things we talked about is we're still not seeing the adoption as quickly as we would like, those of us who do this kind of work, of seeing the adoption of men being involved in parenting classes, learning more and such. Now, it is still coming, is the best word. It's happening. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, having seen it now over a longer period of time, have you seen a change? When you first started, were there any men learning about parenting and being involved?
No, you're really so right about that. It is happening in that we used to not have any men in our classes. Now we might have 2 or 3 or 4. And we call that progress. But the other progress that we have noticed is that men go along with it, at least. It might be the women who are more interested still have that more mothering instinct, which I don't believe that's true too, because we know that men do that just as well if they're given the opportunity. They have that, but they're just that tradition.
Well, there's so much expectation.
Yeah, the expectations are usually
cultural aspects of it. There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
But it's like I just really have found that more men are willing to go along with it and appreciate it and like to do it too. But I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Because I think there needs more publicity for it, more invitation for it. And so I just keep...
Yeah, and what I'm curious is, I have my own theories on why men haven't been involved and haven't taken as much steps in it. I'm curious on your take on it. We discussed a little bit about this when we met before, is I have always felt like there isn't enough pain or reward. People do things because of either fear or greed, and there might not be enough reward or pain related to parenting for men to be motivated enough to be that involved.
You are so right. And one of my favorite all-time movies is Kramer versus Kramer. And anybody who hasn't watched that movie should go back and watch it, because it describes exactly what you're saying. Where Dustin Hoffman was fine to go off to work and let his wife take care of it until he was left with that job. And talk about all the parenting instincts that came out with him, that he would sacrifice everything. And I just love that movie. One of the reasons I love it too, though, is I heard somebody describe that it doesn't have bad or good people. They're gray human beings. In other words, they both have their faults and they both have their virtues. And which, by the way, reminds me, I want to make it really clear that when you use positive discipline, it does not mean your children will be perfect. And it does not mean you will be perfect.
Absolutely.
It just means that mistakes are opportunities to learn. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, I love it that saying we want you to help kids celebrate mistakes. Okay, you made a mistake, what you can learn from it.
Coaching them.
And that you also can make mistakes and get into what we call the flip lit stage, Daniel Siegel's, that when you're get upset, you flip your lid, having access only to your midbrain.
Yeah, well, the positive discipline, the tools. There's so many things I think that it resonates with me. Yes, you have, call it some more tools in your arsenal and such. But I think for me, so much of it was confidence. Mm-hmm. It was confidence, learning these kinds of philosophies and strategies I didn't feel lost. I felt like at least I had something that I could turn to when this situation happens, and almost like there's a familiarity with it. And as a result of it, I ended up getting less upset. I ended up getting, yelling less and doing all these things because so much of that is frustration. It's frustration, it's anger, it's all these things because I don't know how to solve the problem.
Right.
As a man or whatever, I have to solve it. Here's a situation, my child is doing this, I have to solve it. And I think I've learned I can't always solve it. I'm not, like you said, you can't always be perfect. And so a big part of all of this parenting strategies and everything is that of just like knowing that you don't have to be perfect, but you feel confident knowing that there are ways to handle certain things. There's things that are going to work better than others. And so for me, I think that was kind of the biggest change, was just that inner confidence and that feeling like, okay, now I've got some tools. Like I've got some things that I can go back on. And you had handed me before when we first got here, these 52 cards, which was brilliant. You said like, if there's a situation, pick a card and it'll show you how to handle it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, at least you'll have, that's 52 different options on how to handle a situation.
If you pick one that doesn't work, try another one.
Yeah.
Get your kids to pick one.
But for people who say, well, that's a unique situation. That,
No.
You've seen it all. There are no unique situations or, difference. Everyone feels like their situation is unique, but, you've made it pretty clear that, if you have a deck of 52 of them, you can probably solve most problems.
Well, especially because they're basic concepts. And then you have to use your own heart and wisdom to make that like being kind. There's a million ways to be kind. And then how can you be firm? But like when we say make a connection before correction.
Right.
It's unique to you how you're going to make that connection. It could be just validated their feelings. It could say, I think we both need some time, and I understand, or, there's ways to make a connection before you then make the correction. And then correction does not mean punishment. It's working on solution.
Right.
But that's still unique. It's not word for word, except we do have one book, Positive Discipline A to Z, where you can pick just about any problem from lying to, not going to bed at night, where we give specific ideas.
Yeah, well, I think that's what gives us confidence. And I think, when I speak with men, the lack of confidence is what hurts them. It's like there's actually like a hurt about it. It's the ego. It's I'm supposed to be this strong, person who knows what they're doing. And that's when you can kind of, I don't know, throw your hands up, but kind of just admit that you don't know what you're doing. You've never done this before. In most cases, it's not like they had great models. Right. Their parents weren't modeling the behavior. So it's okay to admit that you don't know what you're doing. And I still admit that to my kids.
Right.
Exactly. I'll say to my kids, I don't know how to handle this situation. What do you think? And my kids are usually pretty good, with a solution. And so I know you teach that too.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, that's what we just love. Put it on the family meeting agenda. Say we've got this problem. What are some ideas? But I want to give you another example of when you said feeling the pain. One of my sons got a divorce and was left with full-time custody of 3 kids. And he wrote a blog called Single Dad Brad, and just showed, I'll talk about the pain of all of a sudden being with 3 children, all of them younger.
Sure.
And he says, especially that when he got the flu one time, and each of the kids got it through, and then at the end he got it through, and he says, boy, that's when he gained a lot of humility too about talking about how. But what he started doing with the tools is he got his kids involved in learning about them. They would put one at a time on the refrigerator, and then they would all work on it. And so he gives the examples. He said, one time it was validate feelings, and so he put a card on and then he was involved with one of his children giving him a lecture, and one of them went over and pointed, Dad. And he said, oh yeah, okay.
Well, it's so great when they call us out. Yeah, my kids will do that too, or the situation will happen. And they already know what I'm going to say before I say it because I've said it so many times, And, I might say, hey, listen, you can't listen to what somebody else is saying. You get to decide how you feel, and they're like, we know, Like they've heard it so many times. But at the same time, it is so wonderful to see your children implement these kinds of strategies. Like you said, if you've taught now your children are implementing that to their children. It's just, it's wonderful to have that feeling. And I know that when I see my kids have empathy, or express some sort of, thing to some, that's what feels great. It's not the accomplishments. It's not that stuff. It's, my son's friend was like hurt and he says, I'm so sorry that you felt that way. Is there anything I can do to help? That to me was like, okay, to my wife, we're like, we did it. We did okay. It wasn't getting a medal or getting this honor. Those human elements that we're trying to teach is what's gold.
Right. And the example you just gave shows that you were modeling that. And we keep saying what you do, what you model is the best teacher of all. And
now,
obviously,
I model it now.
Well, but no, he must have heard you doing that in order to be modeling too, and felt it. And this is also one of the reasons, that positive discipline now has become popular all over the world, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons is because we do experiential activities, where instead of just lecture,
people learn.
We learn. We get them involved in these where they become the child and they feel, okay, what are you thinking and feeling, deciding when you experience this? And then they also role play practicing it. It's so interesting because so often when we're going to do a role play or they practice a new tool, like asking questions instead of telling. Well, when they first start the role play, they start telling because that's what they're used to. We say, excuse me, what did you say you were going to do? Oh, yeah, I need to ask, what do you think?
It's such a dynamic way to learn. It sticks in, because, people learn in different ways, obviously. Like I know for myself, I'm more auditory, so I can listen to something and get it. I have trouble reading it or so, but if somebody's acting it out, it's just another way to try to learn, and that's great. I mean, the fact
and then also when we're asking, what are you learning? And they get to express that in their own language rather than just trying to absorb a lecture. So it's just so much more effective.
It makes it a little bit more concrete. Yeah, they get to actually adapt it to their own words, like you said. They're able to use what's meaningful to them versus just what's meaningful in the book or whatever. Right. Another concept that has been really, really important for me is encouragement versus praise. Being proud of yourself versus I'm so proud of you, know, and I still see so many people utilizing that and not realizing that, that becomes this external feeling or this external, something that comes from the outside to make them feel better, which is what social media, which is what social media is. We can go there. It's like so many people not having that internal validation of feeling good about themselves. So as a result, are turning to the outside to get validated. So,
and what's interesting is there's been another researcher right now. I cannot remember the name of the person who really found out that praise hampers children's ability to be more creative because they're afraid, well, if I might not get the praise. And so the difference is, like, instead of saying, oh, I'm so proud of you for getting the A, to say you must be so proud of yourself.
Yeah, you worked hard.
So it's not that you're not still acknowledging it, but you're helping them say, I appreciate all the hard work you did put into that, but you pleased me now.
Right.
But I have to tell you, sometimes we get so paranoid. Oh, am I using praise? Am I using encouragement? And I got an email from a woman actually in Australia who was saying that her daughter, who had worked so hard and was getting really good grades, and she came home and was so happy. And the mom said, "Oh, you must be so proud of yourself." She said, "Mom, can't you just say you're proud of me like a normal mom?" And I said, every child wants to hear that their parent is proud.
But you're proud unconditionally.
Yeah, but you need to watch that. You do it like ice cream. If you had a steady diet of ice cream, it's not healthy. But once in a while, it's a real treat. And so go ahead and do praise once in a while. But if you start noticing that your kid is looking for you, do I need it? Always constantly needing that praise, which they do at 4 and 5 anyway.
Yes.
There's some of it that's developmentally appropriate.
But don't you think the praise, I guess even being careful of doing that once in a while versus the type of praise of what I've talked about often is praising unconditionally, because we got, I guess, be careful that the praise is because they accomplish something, or so I guess, as an example, like when they do the grades,
Mm-hmm.
would you say something like, you know what, I'm proud of you no matter what, you worked hard. It does, the grade doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's important for you if that's important to you, but it's more, I'm going to be proud of you no matter what. It's kind of like, I'm going to love you no matter what.
Exactly.
I'm going to be proud of you no matter what.
Exactly.
Because we talked about the safety and the significance and all that. That
Mm-hmm.
seems to then go in line with that. So
Right.
yeah, it's the proud thing is definitely around our house we're very conscious about that.
Well, the other thing is what I notice is that parents are clapping about their children, no matter what. Little kids, I think anything they do is clap, clap, clap. And I just think that it is so easy for children to get the idea that they always have to have that approval.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I've watched a child tie a shoe, one of my grandchildren, and he was really struggling, and I really wanted to jump in and help. But if I stayed back and I watched, he was really into it. He was not struggling. He was learning.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter how long it took. If I had have gone in and said anything, I would have robbed him of the feeling of accomplishment that he had himself. It would have become about me rather than him. That's what we have to be careful of.
And as parents, we don't think of that. We don't think of that at all. We think, this is my way of showing them that I love them.
Exactly.
I'm going to help them do this. I'm going to make that sandwich for them because they can't make it for themselves, or maybe they could, but this is how I want to show my love.
Right.
Yeah, and that, I give the example of so many parents when my kids were young would carry their children's backpack.
Oh, yeah.
And my line was, if you're old enough to have a backpack, you need to carry it yourself.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense that if the parent would tie the shoes, carry the backpack, do everything. It's like, what is that child learning? Now, from the parent side, they're doing it out of love.
Yes, and some of them I've heard, I don't need to teach them responsibility when they're young because they have plenty of time to learn it later. Not true. What they don't understand is that we all know now that children are developing their beliefs about themselves, their personality, by the time they're 5. And so already by the time they're 5, they've developed the belief, I'm capable, I can contribute, I can help, or you're supposed to do it for me.
Right.
And it's much harder. Like my daughter also said, the one who is now co-author of one of the books and a therapist said, I didn't even realize how many skills I was learning until I got away from home and with all my roommates who didn't have these skills, who didn't know. Yeah. And she said, we had to start having family meetings.
The context is important. Yeah, you don't realize that. I had similar where, we had to do our own laundry. We had to do it because, my mom's schedule, she was originally in charge of it. And then she was like, no, you're making your own food. You're doing your own laundry. You're doing all that. I went away to college. I was the only person who knew. Everyone else had pink underwear or, because they would mix the reds and the whites together. I mean, I made those mistakes when I was early on, but it was just something where she had taught us that we had to be self-sufficient, and part of it was out of it was forced because of her scheduling, but that's where I learned to do a lot of things for myself.
You might say forced, but see, to me, that's good. I think that more parents, frankly, should work.
Yeah.
So, when we talk with single parents, don't see this as a detriment to your children, but they get now to help. You get to be a team. They're going to be even more needed. And so you can provide that with them.
Yeah.
Rather than, poor us, it's like.
Right. You're empowering
there's some people who probably felt sorry for you. Look, his mother works. He has to do all this. And so you're saying, wow, look at all the great things he gets to learn here.
Yeah, no, it was great. This is all really good. The last thing I want to talk about and get your philosophy on is screen time. And it is, we talk about screen time, which I want to separate from social media. Social media is a little bit different as far as, kids and their interaction. That I don't even want to go there. That's too long of a conversation. This is more about, the use of screen, the use of time. And obviously this last year and a half has completely changed everything that I had planned as far as my kids using screens and electronics. Because I had planned for their huge delay to not use them. And as a result of having to use it for their friends, to communicate, having to use it for school, having to, it completely changed everything.
How old are they?
My son is 12 and my daughter is now 11. And so all of their interactions, especially during quarantine, they weren't able to do anything. It had to be through the screen. So we had to get a new computer, get a new thing, and I had not planned obviously of any of that. We had, my son has now it's going to be his 13th birthday. We just got a phone that is very limited. It just only does text and calls. So there's no internet, no social media. And so we've been very limited on trying to expose it. But gaming, computers, YouTube, all of these things now. And so I guess one of my questions would be, is there motivation to limit it if you're not seeing a negative impact on the child that you can notice? In other words, child gets good grades, child is social, child does their responsibilities around the house. Is there then reason to limit that other than, because my thought would be, is other than research that might say it's not good for your brain, or your eyes or the strain or something like that. I guess where I'm coming from as the parent, not educator, is we not argue, we don't argue about it, but we go back and forth, about should we not? Well, they're good kids, they're getting their stuff done. How much is okay?
The reason I went, is because this is a topic that could take a day.
Yeah.
Or longer. And first of all, it's addictive.
Yeah.
It's addictive. And that's what we just have to know. And sometimes I like to use the analogy, if you wouldn't put a bowl of M&Ms or candy on the coffee table and say, help yourself anytime you want, kids. We know we need to limit it. We've written an ebook called Help, My Child is Addicted to Screens. Yikes, so am I.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say it this way. We have one tool called Decide What You Will Do. And to me, I think that's the one that should be used the least often, except when it comes to screens. And I just think that just the way we know that kids need moderation or rules around sugar and candy, because it's addictive. I'm addicted to sugar too, so I really know what that's like. I just think it's even more important to have guidelines.
So some sort of limitation.
Limitations. And also it's like, sometimes it's easier to limit screens if you have other things for them to do. If you make sure, okay, you have to have this much outside time. You have to have this, like my grandchildren now that are involved in sports, and they spend so much time in baseball that they don't have as much time on screens, but boy, do they love their screens when they can. Yeah. They are addictive. That's what we have to, I don't care what anybody says.
So is it more of the screen itself, or just the fact that they're addicted to one thing? That's where I'm like, let's say it's baseball, the 24/7, the child wants to play baseball. Is it because it's a screen and because I guess that we're learning, it could have more negative effect. Obviously, when the children are very young, it has an impact.
I just so happen to have gone to a conference on brain science and education, and they show all the stuff that's going on in the brain. It's addictive. Yeah. It activates different parts of the brain, but they're here to stay. Right. They're here. So what we need to do is just have as many guidelines as we can. But some of the things I think that parents should do, that should very deciding what they'll do, for example, is turning that nobody can have screens after 8 o'clock at night or 9 if you have to do.
So does the parent have to do that too?
Yeah, and there's the key.
Yeah.
How many of us as parents, is the first thing we do when we wake up, check is our email, can't even go to the bathroom.
So as I'm on my phone, I said, you can't use your phone.
Yes, exactly.
That's not okay?
But when I first realized how addictive they were, it was quite a while before the iPhone, even before the smartphones, and I put hearts on my computer. And what I found one time is that I was playing hearts and it was midnight and I'm going like this. And I'm thinking, one more game. Why am I doing this? I don't even enjoy it. And I just thought, I'm addicted. So I just wiped it off of my computer. And but now with all the social media, it's just so sad though when you see how many kids are affected by how many likes they get.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's why I said going down that path is definitely a different, it's a whole other conversation.
It is, and it's big. And what is the name of that movie or the documentary?
The Social Network.
The Social.
Or no. Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
You're probably thinking, but I think it's so good to watch that and to realize that the people who create them don't want their kids using them because they know.
Right.
And that's what's sad to me is that when money has taken over what's really best for our kids.
For sure. Well, this has been great. I wanted to give you an opportunity too. Are there any specific things about positive discipline that you wanted to talk about? I mean, I know, you had mentioned even right before you came here, you were talking overseas and, doing trainings and things. It seems like there's always a positive discipline class happening somewhere at some point,
Well, what's interesting is that when we started the pandemic, we thought, oh no, because, we do experiential. But our trainers have just gotten so creative and they've learned how to do these experiential activities on Zoom.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And what is even more interesting is that where we used to have a class with people local, now we get on a class and we have people from 3 or 4 other countries. Yeah. It's like.
So if people want to do a class, they can go to, is it positivediscipline.com? Is that the best?
Both positivediscipline.com and positivediscipline.org.
Okay.
And there'll be when you look at what the events, you'll see classes listed all over the world.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Well, and of course, we have like the positive discipline for parents, for classroom, in the workplace, for
the relationship. You have the relationship.
Yeah. And early childhood education. Yeah, because what we have found is these are basic principles of treating people with dignity and respect that are applicable to all relationships. I want to do a deck of cards for politics.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. I don't know if people will buy it. Will people buy it? The politicians certainly aren't going to buy it. But
no.
It's one of those things where it's needed. It just might not sell as well. There's
exactly.
That's the difference. Well, thank you for coming here and talking. This has been great. I really enjoy the work. It was inspirational of, especially when I was originally learning these materials, and just really respect what you've done over the years and the expansion. I mean, looking at the different countries, the amount of people that are aware of it and implementing it, and rightfully so, because it works.
Right.
These are tools that work for anybody.
But I also want to mention how I came across you. And I think you should give a link, because when was it on Instagram?
May have been. I think I put it on maybe LinkedIn and then maybe Instagram too.
I think it was on Instagram where I saw you give the best synopsis of positive discipline I've ever seen. I thought, who is this guy? And so I had to comment because it was really, really well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to give credit to the work. That's one of the things too, I think, in the world of parenting education and such. It's everyone's collective ideas are useful. Mm-hmm. It's not, I dare say, it's not a competition. It's like we're all working for the same goal, which is helping parents learn this information. And so for me, I love the material. I think it's great if for people to take the courses and the classes, and we'll make sure we'll put the links on there and such. And
which, by the way, an Adlerian concept is cooperation instead of competition. Really a belief
so then we're speaking
that we're social beings who really need to contribute.
Yeah.
The word he used was Gemeinschaftsgefühl, which is a German word meaning social feeling and social interest and wanting to really contribute.
Yeah, it's what's the best for the collective.
Exactly.
Right. Well, thank you again, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yes.
Again, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I certainly did. Again, I want to thank Dr. Jane for her time and also her contribution to parenting. She has put out a tremendous amount of information and effort and time and it's greatly appreciated. So if you want any more information, you can visit positivediscipline.com. There's also positivediscipline.org, which has a lot of information. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. That helps us spread our message. And if you have any comments, be sure to put them below. We'll see you next time.